Hello everyone, Alchemist here. Thank you very much for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. Today I will talk about something that many people throughout history have been obsessed with. Something that caught the attention and the curiosity of many rulers, many kings, and many empires for thousands of years. And that is the Philosopher's Stone. What is the Philosopher's Stone? What is this mysterious stone? And why is it called a stone and not something else? The Philosopher's Stone is the outcome of the work of alchemists. If any given alchemist do the proper work, the magnum opus, the grand work, then they can reach something, a substance, that is called the Philosopher's Stone. And it's a stone. And it was a stone before it was anything else. I just want you to open up your mind with me here, because this is quite interesting and it's a different interpretation from what's popular in the Western society. The Philosopher's Stone is said to be a magical stone that can give people eternal life, eternal youth, gold, transmuting base metals into gold, and many other magical things. It is even said that it can grow your hair, it can make you look like you're much younger than your age, and that it can grant you anything you desire. And most importantly, eternity, eternal life. That means that you don't die physically anymore. And that's why many rulers across Europe were obsessed with it, and they hired a lot of alchemists to work on producing the Philosopher's Stones for them, especially King Rudolf. And this is well documented. He is known for hiring many alchemists from all around the world to make the Philosopher's Stone for him, because he was obsessed with it. So Prague is a prominent city for alchemy, because there were many alchemists living there. And it is a fascinating city. I have been there, and it's a truly magical city. There's something different about it. The Philosopher's Stone, it is said to be a stone and not something else. But some of you might say, Seth, the Philosopher's Stone is just a metaphorical thing. It's just a metaphor for transformation, for reaching your greatest version. Some of you might say that because all of the spiritual New Age books, that's what they say. Alchemy's interpretation of transformation have shifted towards spiritual growth, something that is completely spiritual. While that is correct, and especially with Carl Jung making this quite popular, that alchemy is a metaphor for transformation, for spiritual transformation, especially in psychology, because in the realm of psychology, Carl Jung is a prominent figure. So you find a lot of spiritual teachers or gurus who use this as just a metaphor, and they say alchemy is a metaphor. Alchemy is also physical, it is also material. And I am one of the very few alchemists around the world that will tell you so, because most people don't even believe in that. So let's go back in time. Let's travel to the past, when alchemy was thriving, when alchemy didn't really have to do with spiritual growth, when it was a kind of science that has become glorified because of its magical attributes, turning lead into gold, turning base metal into gold, finding the Philosopher's Stone. This all seems magical and nonsensical even. These magical aspects of alchemy is what made it a huge part of the occult and spirituality eventually. But what most people omit is that it's a physical thing. That a lot of alchemists who practiced alchemy, and I want you to use your imagination with me here, a bunch of men who are wearing long robes, they have long beards, and they're working in their laboratories day and night. They probably don't smell good, and they're just doing experiments day after day after day. So if you think about it that way, you'll find that there's nothing glorifying about alchemy. But the spiritual movement romanticized it and made it something that sounds cool and mysterious. You find many cafes and restaurants and places around the world that call themselves Alchemy this, Alchemy that, Alchemy Cafe, the Alchemist restaurant. And especially with the popular book of Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist, the novel The Alchemist, which is one of my favorite books, actually, that book made alchemy even more popular. That novel, that story made alchemy even more popular. And the very, very interesting thing about that book is that it has a story behind the lines. The whole book that Paulo Coelho have written, that novel, The Story of the Alchemist, is an alchemical transmutation of the fool's journey. So Santiago is basically starting from the Negredo stage until he reaches his Philosopher's Stone. So the Alchemist book is the grand work, the magnum opus, camouflaged or represented in a story form, which is brilliant. Paulo Coelho knows alchemy very well, and that's why he was able to do it in a pertinent way to depict the magnum opus, the alchemical work, in a beautiful story. Because you can only do so if you really know what alchemy is all about. Not just, oh, it's inner work, it's inner transformation. So, what about the Philosopher's Stone? What is this thing? What's the deal with this stone? And why is it a stone? The alchemists in medieval time, when they learned all of the knowledge of alchemy from the Arabs, who translated their work from the Greeks, who got all of their knowledge from the Egyptians. So you see how it goes. So it all started in ancient Egypt, and ancient Egypt is the remnants of the Atlantean civilization. So alchemy dates back to the beginning of time. So when the Europeans translated the works of the Arabs about alchemy, they became obsessed with it. And when I say obsessed, I mean really obsessed. Way more than the Arabs. And their main goal was to transform base metal into gold, and most importantly, find the Philosopher's Stone. Because that's the goal of alchemists, is to find the Philosopher's Stone. And what if I tell you, and here's the point that's going to surprise a lot of you. What if I tell you that the Philosopher's Stone is real? If you have the proper recipe, and if you work properly on the metal, you'll get the stone. The actual stone. And it is red, by the way. But nowadays, very, very few people have that knowledge, the knowledge of producing the Philosopher's Stone, because, first and foremost, you need to have a laboratory. Just like the alchemists of medieval time, you need to have a laboratory that has equipment to work on the metal. And the alchemist will spend years and years and years and decades working on the metal and doing experiments before maybe one day finding the Philosopher's Stone. Yes, it takes years and decades. This is not something you find in just a few months. And the alchemist, as he or she is conducting the alchemical work in their laboratory, doing the work on the metal, they're also spiritually transforming. So they're transforming the metal, they're working on the metal, but that metal is the representation of themselves. So they're also transforming. They're also transmuting their nasty things into beautiful things. In the metal, when you work on it, usually you're going to have this residue that looks nasty. It's like filth. It's like this bad, smelly substance that comes out of the metal. That's the metal being cleansed. And who does the cleansing? It's the alchemist. So when the alchemist cleanses the metal, purifies it, dissolves it, there's different ways of working on a metal, then the same happens to your own soul. It's the exact same thing. So that's why a lot of alchemists were never able to reach the Philosopher's Stone. Very, very few alchemists were able to do so, because these are the ones who were actually aware, spiritually aware, and they knew that the metal is changing vis-a-vis themselves, in relation to themselves. The metal is you, you are the metal. That's how it works. If you don't have that awareness in your mind, you will never reach the Philosopher's Stone. Then it becomes chemistry. And that's what chemistry is. Chemistry is the descendant of alchemy. It's the science without spirit involved. Alchemy was science and spirit together, combined, 50-50. When spirit was removed, it became chemistry. And that's what chemistry is nowadays. It's empty. It's soulless. You're just mixing a bunch of things. There's no spirit involved. And that spirit that's involved in the experimentation is what led to the Philosopher's Stone, if you follow the recipe properly. And the journey to find the Philosopher's Stone is not easy. Back in medieval times and prior to that, you first had to work with the prima materia, the primary substance, or the initial substance. And to find that initial substance, at least in Europe, the alchemists had to do a pilgrimage. Oh yes, on foot. That takes months to just get the initial substance. And that initial substance is called the antimony. You can look it up. And it was only found in a beach in Spain, at the coast, at a certain time of the year. So let's say you're an Italian alchemist or you're a German alchemist and you want to go find your antimony. To start your alchemical work, you have to walk on foot to get to Spain, to southern Spain. And that journey from Italy, or let's say Germany, to Spain, it's going to take you months on foot. That if you're lucky that no one robs you or kills you or whatever. So it's going to take you months to do that journey. And if you're lucky and get to Spain, to that beach, your timing has to be correct, because that antimony, the initial substance, only shows up at one time of the year. And if you arrive and it's past that time, you have to stay in Spain near the beach for the whole year to wait for the antimony to be washed by the beach again. And once you collect your initial substance, because this is known in magic as well, you're not supposed to take the same path or the same route that you took while coming. So for returning, you have to always take a different path. So the alchemist will take the initial substance, will collect it, and they will take a boat and go back to their initial place where they came from. And then they start the work. So to sum it up, before you even start your alchemical work, you have to spend months and months on a journey just to get to the starting point. You have to spend many months on a journey, and that journey might kill you, by the way, because you might not get there, before you can even start the work. And after you start the work, which is the magnum opus, and it starts with the black phase or the nigredo phase, from there, it's going to take you years and years, maybe decades, before reaching and producing the Philosopher's Stone, if you're lucky, and if you're doing the right thing, and if you have the right recipe, and if your soul is perfectly harmonized with the metal. So it's a long journey. This is not something that happens overnight or over a few months. And it's very challenging, and it's very, very hard. It's not easy. But believe it or not, that's what medieval alchemists did. They had to make this pilgrimage to find the initial substance, the prima materia. Nicolas Flamel did this pilgrimage as well. Oh yeah. And you pass by the cathedral or the church of Camino del Santiago, and many people stop there to pray, and that beautiful sanctuary, that cathedral, is full of alchemical representations and images, because all of the alchemists of medieval Europe had to pass by that church. It was like the stopping point. And Paulo Coelho, who wrote the Alchemist book, did this pilgrimage as well. That's why I'm telling you, he's also an alchemist, because he knows what he's talking about. Yes, the author of the book, The Alchemist, did this pilgrimage on foot as well. Now, many people do this pilgrimage and they're not alchemists. I just want to let you know. There are many people who do this pilgrimage because it's a pilgrimage connected to Christianity, to the church. So many people do it for religious reasons, but they only stop at the church of Camino del Santiago, also known in French as Saint-Jacques de Compostelle. I'm saying it in French because most of the renowned alchemists of medieval Europe were French, including Nicolas Flamel. So the alchemists, they continued to the beach to collect their prima materia. It takes decades to understand, to fulfill, to accomplish. You need a laboratory to conduct all of these experimentations. But throughout time, this have transformed. It disappeared. Now it's chemistry. Now it's spiritual alchemy. Now alchemy is just like a metaphor. The Philosopher's Stone is a metaphor. But alchemists used to produce the Philosopher's Stone. Not all of them, but some of them. And you know what they did with that Philosopher's Stone? They would eat it. They would swallow it. Why do you think Isaac Newton died? What's the cause of the death for Isaac Newton? Everyone says he's the father of physics. But he's an alchemist who was obsessed with finding the Philosopher's Stone. And he reached a substance, he produced a substance that he thought was the Philosopher's Stone. He ingested it and he died. Because after producing the stone, you're supposed to ingest it. So it's a very dangerous game. Many alchemists died, including Isaac Newton, by doing so. Many. And very few did it and survived. Some survived, but very, very few. But what happens when they ingest it, and this is just what I know, you can do your own research. You don't have to believe it. Don't believe everything you hear, including what I'm telling you right now. Do your own research. What happens after you ingest the Philosopher's Stone is that you go into a type of coma, and that coma can last for days. You basically die. And that's why if people find you, they might think that that's it, you're gone, or that you're in a coma until you come back. But when you come back from that coma, you are reborn. You're a new person. And that's actually the death card number 13. That's what it represents. When you die and you're reborn, it's also in the red stage, the rubedo stage, when you rise from the ashes like a phoenix. Because first you have to die. So when you ingest the Philosopher's Stone, you're gone. The old you is gone. And you're gone physically as well. It's not a near-death experience. You're gone for days. It's a coma. And then you come back. And when you come back, you're completely different. You have immense knowledge, immense wisdom, the way you talk, the way you behave, the way you see life, everything is completely different, and it is from a high level. You start seeing everything as an enlightened being. It literally gives enlightenment. This substance gives enlightenment. You start talking and behaving like a wise master, like an enlightened being. It's one way of reaching enlightenment. One way is like how the Buddha did it, through intense meditation, spiritual work and meditation. And one way is the Philosopher's Stone. Because enlightenment can be accomplished throughout different mediums. Even the Buddha himself said so. He said, meditation and what I'm preaching is not the only path towards enlightenment. He said there are other paths. And you have to keep that in mind. You have to keep your mind open. There are different paths that will lead you to enlightenment. But what works for you is going to be up to you. What helps you the most is going to be up to you. You choose that. That decision you make and no one else. Maybe meditation and the Dharma doesn't work for some people. Some people just can't meditate. Does that mean that they cannot reach enlightenment? No, they can. But they're going to use a different path, a different tool, a different medium. Alchemy and the Philosopher's Stone is one of them. But that Philosopher's Stone, the red stone, it's a representation of the alchemist's work. So it's this pure substance that was produced after decades, years and years and years of hard work. So what you get there is a pure gem that represents your essence, your soul. So when you ingest it, it transforms you. It brings your higher self and you together in union. You unite with your higher self. And the people who succeeded in ingesting it and coming back after the coma, their life changes. They go on becoming popular teachers, famous people who change the world, doing incredible things. I'm not sure about the eternal life or staying young or having eternal youth. I'm not sure about that. But transforming base metal into gold, that's actually possible even without the Philosopher's Stone. Many alchemists can do that. They can transfer a base metal into gold just if they know the right thing to do. Because in alchemy, you're supposed to use a kiln for fire. You have to communicate with the fire. And you have to sometimes invoke the salamander of fire. Oh yeah. And that's why science thinks of alchemy as a joke, because it is mixed with magical things, with things that don't make sense. But they're real. These things exist. So if you invoke the proper fires, if you do the right work, you will get to gold. That's an easy thing. You will transform base metals into gold. That's not very hard to do. The hard thing to do is to get the Philosopher's Stone. But it did change a lot of people's lives. Many alchemists succeeded in having it, and it changed their lives. But I'm not sharing this with you to tell you that you're supposed to have a laboratory and try to produce the Philosopher's Stone. No, the world has changed. We are living in a different era, a different time. a time ruled by technology, by powerful people, by money. Things are very different. And people don't believe in alchemy anymore. They think it's a metaphor, they think it's a spiritual metaphor. So things are very different right now. I'm telling you this because I want to share with you the fact that the Philosopher's Stone is a real thing. It's a real substance. It's not only a metaphor. Alchemy relies on the physical world and the spiritual world together in harmony, equally. It's not just spiritually, because right now alchemy is just spiritual. But if that's the case, then you're not understanding alchemy. Then you don't know what alchemy is all about. You think it's a metaphor. And it's not even a good metaphor, because you're just glorifying some long bearded men with robes who are probably sweaty in laboratories. That's what you're doing. So what's the point of glorifying it spiritually? Alchemy relies on both the physicality and the spirituality. The goal of the alchemist is to embody the spirit into the physical. They're equal. The physical world is equal to the spiritual. And when you find that balance, you understand the physical reality and how it works. You understand the spirit realm and how it works. And you use them together equally to your advantage. That's when enlightenment happens. That's why I'm sharing this with you. Because I want you to know that alchemy is also physical. The Philosopher's Stone, it's a stone. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called a stone. And alchemy is the art of transmutation. It's not even a science. I mean, chemistry is a science, but alchemy is an art. And that's why it produces the Philosopher's Stone, not the Scientist's Stone. If it was a science, it would be called the Scientist's Stone. So alchemy is an art that produces the Philosopher's Stone. But when spirit was taken away from it, it became a science. And that's why it became chemistry. So chemistry is a science, alchemy is an art that uses both equally, that uses the left brain and the right brain equally. Perfect balance and harmony, the middle path, which leads to mastery. So I just wanted to share this with you because there are very, very, very few alchemists nowadays who still have their laboratories and who are producing the Philosopher's Stone. They're either trying to produce it or they have produced it. Yes, in this day and age, there are people who are doing that. But they're very, very few. Like you can literally count them. But I'm sharing this with you not so you can do that. You have your own path. But first I want to tell you that it's a real thing. It's not just a spiritual thing as how the West have proclaimed it to be because of Carl Jung and psychology. I want you to know that alchemy is a physical thing, as physical as spiritual. And I want to share the fact that always seek balance between the physical and the spiritual, because that's the only thing that's going to lead you to your Philosopher's Stone, to your enlightenment. The Buddha, before he gained enlightenment in his meditation, he mastered the physical realm. He knew what the physical realm was all about. He did ascetic practices, fasting. He traveled around on foot. He understood the nature of this physical reality, and then he gained enlightenment. So he had that balance too. So just remember to always seek that balance, because alchemy is about that balance. Maybe it's not going to be through producing the Philosopher's Stone, but it's going to help you one way or another to find your path. The path that is best for you, for your enlightenment, and for reaching your golden state. Buddha, the way he spoke, the way he portrayed himself, the way he said things was completely different after his enlightenment compared to before his enlightenment. It's like it's a different person. It's like someone who's just reborn, someone full of knowledge and wisdom. That's what the stone does. Okay? So I just wanted to share this with you because I know that the Philosopher's Stone now is just a myth, like many myths that have died around the world, like dragons, like many other myths that people don't believe in anymore and they think it's a hoax. But the Philosopher's Stone is real. That's why it's called a stone. And some people produced it, and some people ingested it. And it did change people's lives. So thank you very much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Let me know in the comments section, what do you think about the Philosopher's Stone? I know that in the West, it's just a spiritual, philosophical metaphor, but I want to know your opinion about it being a stone connected to real alchemy from medieval ages, from the Arabs, from the Greeks, from ancient Egypt. I know all about spiritual alchemy, so in the comment section, I want you to write what you think about real alchemy, not the spiritual one that everyone is talking about. I want to know your opinion about real alchemy, the one that has actually died, the physical alchemy. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comment section if you feel like it. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.